Thank you very much, Louis, dear Grant, dear Marty, dear colleagues and friends. This is Fitsilis from the Hellenic Parliament. I'm head of documentation and scientific supervision in the Hellenic Parliament. This is the Parliament of Greece in Athens. And today I'm pleased to try to provide you a quick analysis and maybe frame the discussion around AI in Europe and then in the Greek in Greece. We think that this discussion is timely since in the past few weeks there have been enormous developments both in politics as well as in technology around the development of artificial intelligence tools and services, and this will inevitably influence legislative institutions on all levels, subnational, national, and supranational, for instance, like the European Parliament. Of course, I will bring with me mostly the European perspective, but this is something I would like also to not to give away, because this is where most of my work is being conducted in Europe, and we want also our European values and our European sense of things to be reflected on what we do. So where do we stand now when it comes to AI in parliaments? So I would like to start by saying that in the last survey of AI in parliaments that was conducted by the IPU, and this was just last December, what came out was that we saw that the IPU identified 65 unique use cases of artificial intelligence in parliaments. These 65 unique use cases were implemented or planned by just a handful of parliaments, not more than 9 parliaments, if I recall correctly. The most let's say active parliaments in the field were or are the Italian Parliament, with a staggering amount of 32 use cases. Imagine 32 out of 65 use cases that have been captured by the IPU were planned or already in production in Italy. Then there's traditionally the Brazilian Congress is very strong. It has its solicit system. This has been captured also by previous surveys 2 years ago. This maintains its very strong position in the survey, and as well as the Chilean Parliament, which, if I recall again correctly, we had there in this survey 12 use cases. So 2 years ago, the situation was not like that. 2 years ago, we conducted with my colleague Patrícia de Almeida from the Brazilian Congress a similar survey, and back then, so 2 years ago, we had determined only, if you can say that, 39 use cases. So 39 2 years ago, 65 now. And back then there was a more flat distribution of these use cases. Of course, you had again Italy and Brazil and Canada as well. This time is that the distribution is much more uneven. But of course, in these kind of surveys, you see a lot of very interesting features. First of all, one thing that we saw is that Europe is over proportionally um, to be found there. So most of the use cases came from the European continent. Now, why is that? Of course, one could, since there are no in-depth studies. I'm about to conduct such studies now with my team. Since there are no interviews or any other quantitative or qualitative data published, while one might just have some hypothesis or some thoughts on this. Uh, so one thing that you could say would be possibly that European parliaments might be more advanced in terms of their structures and procedures, that their overall processes are more nuanced, that their democratic governance is a little bit more stable and stronger, so they could react possibly quicker on what it has to do with AI. And this might not be very far from reality, but still, these are just vibes that one can sense. So they are not actual data and interviews on this issue. Uh, but what happened since December? Since December, uh, uh, we what we saw after the change in the administration in the U.S. is this announcement about the Stargate project, and maybe this is something that we would like to talk with Grant and Marty afterwards. So we are talking here about a 500 billion investment. Whether this money exists or not, this is something else. But let's say this is an incredible incentive to push things forward in terms of AI, and of course this will also influence all types of institutions, and inevitably the U.S. Congress as well. What happened now in Europe immediately after this announcement was called? There was a similar announcement by the President of the European Commission, by Ms. von der Leyen. Ms. von der Leyen announced a similar incentive um, of similar magnitude, let's say, 200 billion euros. Again, I'm not entirely aware where all this money will come from, but this is not the point. The point is that we're here within a race regarding AI supremacy, and this 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 type of race will benefit or will influence, if you want me to be more polite, will influence all sorts of administrative and governance aspects. Now, Europe is not a federal state. European Union is a structure, a supranational structure. It is comprised of a supranational administration, and then we have also the member states, the 27 member states. And here applies what we call a multi-level governance system. So we have local, regional, national, and European levels of governance, and in all these levels there can be parliaments, and there are parliaments to guide the processes and to govern the different levels of governance. So this is the state of play when it comes to the big picture. When it comes to the smaller, to be more specific, in Europe, already a couple of years ago, and it is happening as we speak, there have been several incentives to develop AI infrastructure, core infrastructure further. We are talking here about establishing, of course, data centers. At the same time, there have been several incentives to establish or to develop more accurate, to develop European large language models. And there are, of course, some very known ones for Anthropic, the Claude model, there's Mistral, and then there have been also countless national smaller ones that might be not on par with these big large language models, but still they might be sufficient for tackling national tasks or smaller tasks. So one could say that these are that might not be large language models in the sense, but they could be small language models still capable of conducting certain tasks, maybe in the parliamentary workspace, where you might not need super huge models, very difficult, very expensive to train, where you might not have the material to train them on. But still, some smaller models you can argue that might be sufficient for specific tasks, and you have then to specify these tasks. And in order to narrow things down more, there has been a European project from countless one regarding the development of national infrastructure, and the EU very recently, we are talking about just 3 months earlier, I think it was November or maybe early December 2024, announced the establishment of 7, they call them AI factories in Europe. 7 AI factories, I think one is in Barcelona, and what's important for our discussion here is that 1 out of 7 will be placed in Greece, outside Athens, in a suburb, in a small town that it's called Lavrion. So we will have soon enough, my information speak about piloting this high performance computing infrastructure within this year already. We will see. And of course, it is very nice and it's beautiful to have such high performance computing infrastructure, which is a huge data center. Obviously, it will be populated by GPUs for tackling LLM related trainings and calculations. But having such an infrastructure in your country, without having specified a set of services and tools that operate upon this, it's actually meaningless. So either you have both, or you have an issue. So your GPUs need some service in order to for the whole entire system to be efficient and offering added value for citizens, for businesses, and for governance in the country. So the basic idea that we had with our team, and now we come to the Hellenic Parliament, was the following. Since one very big issue also to be discussed with our fine colleagues here is data and system sovereignty, we thought very hard, and we were able to narrow this down to services and suggest these kind of services to our leadership for being able to develop parliamentary systems that rely on data or data that we can generate and we can validate at least, so that we can offer high-level generative AI, obviously services to our citizens, to politicians, to MPs, to legislators, and to the ones that might need this kind of information. and service. This is, of course, easier said than done. We are in the very beginning of this huge endeavor, but at the same time, this would bring um, a rather medium-sized parliament, like the Hellenic Parliament, at the forefront of innovation. I mean, how many parliaments in the world would have the possibility or the opportunity to to access such high level and, and powerful infrastructure in order to fuel their services, to design and accommodate and facilitate services, uh, AI-based services for the citizens or administrators or MPs. So if we manage to do this, and this will be this is sort of a once in a lifetime uh, 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 thing to do, we might be very well uh, showing the way to the parliaments how it can be done to other parliaments, um, because I think parliaments are very good position in every state or in every country are very good positioned at being information hubs to to the whole of governance system, are very well positioned to accommodate and to offer these kind of high level services. Because if they're not parliament, who else on the governance side will be able to offer these kind of services to the stakeholders? So this is when constructing these kind of services, of course, it helps um, when you have some experience. And I would like here to offer you some insight, saying that indeed the Hellenic Parliament has at least 10 years of prior experience in working with AI. Since around the mid 2010, we have in operation a speech-to-text system that is producing that is supporting our processes for generated handsets or generated our parliamentary proceedings. So we know how it is to work with that, with AI, and we know how it is to work with parliamentary processes and transform them. Of course, getting to use a huge data center, um, uh, of course, not exclusively, but maybe in in a prioritized manner. That is, of course, on another level, and there have to be designed very carefully uh, levels of governance so that you access and handle this kind of power very responsibly and in a structured way. And of course, from a strategic perspective, it would make sense that all this should be accommodated within a wider parliamentary strategic parliamentary perspective. All this, I think that is about to be initiated. I'm fairly sure from my discussions that a lot of parliaments in the world are considering having a similar approach, maybe not exactly the same. That would be very difficult. But we are we nobody wants to reinvent the wheel. No, but everybody would like to have access to strong infrastructure that is governed by rules, ideally national infrastructure, so that information does not have to flow on towards some other country, maybe some adversary, maybe some third party that is not very friendly to the national interest. Everybody wants to have a strategic perspective, and parliamentary strategy here is imperative. So maybe before everything else, one should sit back and consult the national stakeholders for developing such a strategic viewpoint, where Parliament is in the middle of it. And then, of course, one should prioritize. So from all possible services and tools and technologies, and if you wish, large language models, which one should you prioritize? Which should you choose, and how to implement? Of course, one should train people. Maybe train here is not the proper expression. Maybe one should educate its people, build AI and digital literacy, both within and outside parliaments. Of course, that's a greater goal, and that is pursued by almost every government. But maybe here AI should be prioritized again. And finally, when it comes to the actual implementation, this should be obviously done in an agile way. And this is something, again, that I would have to talk with Grant and Marty, that have huge experience in developing these kinds of systems. It's not the easiest thing in the world to develop these kinds of systems with such organizations like parliaments. And by the way, what I'm saying, I'm not pulling it out of my head right now. We have conducted a lot of work with Jon van Lucke and George Micros, and we have published our strategic perspective in developing and introducing AI in parliaments just a few months ago. And more publications of this are on their way. So in order to wrap it up and hopefully initiate a very useful discussion for our people, at first, even before thinking about technology, one has to think strategically. I even dare to say that technology is even easy to handle. The technology part, of course, is not straightforward. Still, one needs to train people, to educate people, has to prioritize the applications for introducing them into the parliament before even starting designing and programming and coding. But as I said, this might be very well the easiest part, and I would like here to thank you all for listening, and giving back the floor to you, Luis, to initiate the discussion. Thank you.
I'll jump right in. All right, it's always interesting listening to you, Fotios. I've seen you in a lot of places. I agree with you that a lot of the forward thinking happens to originate out of Europe. Like, there are many reasons for that. Can you talk a little bit about legislation that's perhaps being introduced in Europe to establish guardrails for the use of AI?
Sure. So legislation for the use of AI is simply not around. What is around are to specific regulatory text. One regulatory text that came first was the famous now AI Act of the European Commission. So the AI Act is the regulation, is a more broad framework, that what it introduced is the notion of risk in AI applications. So and depending of the risk classification, the vendors or the organizations that offer AI solutions might need to take certain steps and so on. The second one is from the Council of Europe. They have announced They have announced their framework very recently. That it is around to the rule of law and the human rights. So it's a more high level, nonetheless mandatory for the member states regulation regarding the use of AI. But when we try to be more specific. Let's say, as you mentioned, what about AI in lawmaking? There's nothing there. Well, this statement is not absolutely correct. There's nothing legally binding there. There's still a lot of work done. For instance, just less than a year ago, with a group of 22 people from all around the world, we developed. We were very fortunate in our team to lead this group, and we initiated and published the first guidelines for AI in Parliament. Now, guidelines are not mandatory. Guidelines are in this specific guidelines is a set of 40 guidelines. They are grouped in 6 sections, and of course there are also some specific ones regarding the use in parliamentary applications, in the parliamentary workspace, for instance, in legislation. But nonetheless, this is not mandatory for anybody for any parliament to use. Parallel to that, and we go now a step back. In 2022, there was a group of researchers at the University of Bologna. You know, Monica Palvirani and Fabio Vitali. They were contracted by the European Commission to study the use of AI in the parliamentary workspace. And they came up I think it was June or July 2022. They came up with a first, let's say, short list of possible applications of AI in legislation. So what they did is quite interesting. If you're aware of the legislative cycle, so from the inception of the law, then the enactment, and then its amendment. So this is a cycle. They broke this down into 33 pieces where specific or different AI technologies apply. Of course, you might have different AI. AI is not a single technology, as many people might know. There are multiple AI technologies, and even the notion of AI is not even very clear what we exactly mean by that. So there are different technologies that might apply into different parts of the legislative cycle. For instance, you have translation. There's a different type of AI that might be interesting for translating a legislative text, or that you might have classification function. So there's a different algorithm that does classification, or you have summarization. There's a different algorithm that does summarization, and so on. This is very interesting because it shows that maybe the holy grail, the ideal application of having, let's say, of having one algorithm that you can say, okay, make me a law, and it spits out the ready law. That might be not possible at all. Instead, we are rather talking about a series of steps that can be semi-automated using AI or other technologies in order to contribute, some more, some less, to a more efficient lawmaking process overall, and to to summarize, to finalize my my remark on this, after first uh, this first study that was delivered by the University of Bologna, the same European Commission entity, that is DigiDigit, this is the General Directorate for Informatics, contracted our team. So myself, George, and Fitsilis, in order to follow up. And our study was published just, I think it was in June 2023, 24, and also published as a book in October 2024, so just a few months ago again. And what we did, and what we were asked to do, was the following. Since we knew that legislation is now, let's say, you can put together at least these 33 sections. So first we analyzed this further, and from 33, I think we came up with 59 or something like this thesis. Of course, this is deliberate. I mean, one can continue breaking down the legislative steps and might come up with hundreds, or might group that together and to make them bigger. And so this is totally up to the function that one wants to support. But what we were asked to do has importance, and they asked us to do with a state of technology of mid 2024 and a bit earlier. What are the open source technologies, AI technologies, generative and non-generative AI, that can be used to facilitate each one of these 59, I don't recall exactly the number, it's also unimportant. So find us the open source technologies and also do the match. Which ones are better suited for specific application, for specific part of the lawmaking cycle? And this study is open access as well as the algorithm. And it's very interesting to see that out of these many possible applications, the European Commission already contracted some vendors to develop two of them, sort of a proof of concept. And I mean, since I am in the round here of IT professionals, since you have the algorithms, since you have the use case, and since you are partnered with an institution that wants to drive this forward, you have practically all the necessary elements to have successful proofs of concept. And since they will be successful, I don't doubt about this, I think it will drive also the whole process forward, meaning to construct even more applications that might be useful for legislators. And since this is the European Commission and they tend to do everything they do publicly, if you have such applications, AI-based applications supporting legislation, they will be also available to the national parliament, and by extension to all of us that deal with the matter on a national scale. That will offer us well, a huge advantage, since we might be then not inclined developing these kind of very complex applications from scratch. We will be then having them available on GitHub or whatever. Actually, the Commission has its own GitHub. It's a code space that the Commission gathers its applications, so that everybody can get all these material and try to incorporate it into legacy systems. Obviously, easier said again than done, but better than nothing.
Love it. Can I ask a question? So for however long we've been programming, everything has been deterministic. AI is a non-deterministic piece of technology. It's still quite a black box. So how do you think about that in terms of the specific services that you think governments should engage AI on relative to the values that democracies hold dear, like transparency?
Yeah. Well, that's a very straightforward question. That it might be the first one politicians might ask. So the interesting thing is that 2 years ago, let's go before the emergence of the generative hype. Of course, GPT 1 and 2 has been around. I think the transformer algorithm was there till 2016 or something like this, the first paper. Nobody would ask that question. So AI has been around. I mean, I don't think I'm that old, but let's say we had in the university classes on neural networks, so very basic stuff. And of course, back then we lacked the holistic understanding and maybe the computing capacity to train them sufficiently, or the data. So now you have all there. But the point is, back then nobody was thinking about these kind of stuff. Mostly because the applications were very isolated. Then, if you recall again, in the 2010, so more than 10 years ago, the first ethical issues started to pop up, and these were straight from China. This was not even generative. These were traditional pattern matching algorithms, neural networks trained to identify physical expressions and persons, so in cameras, through cameras. So that was the first thing where you said, okay, this kind of technology might be a little bit, not a little bit, actually, might be quite ethical questionable. And now you come into the parliamentary workspace. So I don't want to downplay this. This is potentially critical, and one needs to separate the critical from the non-critical applications, because the technology we know this since thousands of years. Technology is not inherently good or bad. That maybe we can agree on this. So it's how you use it that makes it good or bad. So when it comes to parliaments, and I don't want to step out of my comfort zone here, the first thing that one might do, as said, is build strategies and the prioritization framework. So through this process, one might be able to specify or to determine these are non-critical, these are critical. Let me give you examples. Speech to text, let's say non-LLM based, traditional speech to text application, the NLP application trained on parliamentary data, and it helps your people. It helps the stenographers. It helps the administration in the parliament and non-parliament perform the transcription much quicker and efficient. I don't see much ethical consideration there. Of course, you still have optical recognition. There are parliaments, or there have been actually, well, there are parliaments that use it, but there have been also lots of research where you use parliamentary cameras and to verify which MP is in the room, instead of you having some guy manually ticking, okay, this MP from this party. So that I don't see any issue there, serious issue. But of course, there can be serious issues. When serious issues come from side matters, serious implications. What are these side matters? Are the ones that I mentioned just in the beginning of my intervention. I spoke about data sovereignty and systemic sovereignty. So imagine you use some LLM, some large language model. I don't want here to make advertisement. Use of Perplexity, and they have some servers somewhere. But imagine you use something else, and these servers are in a third country that might not have the best relations with your own, and you're asking stuff in order to make educated, to educate yourselves about some legislative proposal. And your adversary might have access to this kind of intervention, this kind of discussion. They might very well know what are you intending to legislate before you are actually doing so. That's not good. And you can also, I could go on forever. I mean, it makes the thing even more creepier. The interesting thing is that this is very true, that this can happen. It's not like, okay, some sort of a science fiction and a case that might never occur. And unfortunately, it's not like this. We are talking here about API calls. They can be intercepted. They can be even fake APIs, whatever you can call it. I mean, from the cybersecurity perspective, there might be very huge issues that you want to address. And therefore, building sovereign AI, sovereign systems, like the ones I mentioned, the AI factory that is just around your door, maybe not on-prem, that might still be a little bit problematic. Not entirely impossible, but let's say not every parliament might be inclined in having a data center in its basement. Or not. I mean, who knows? From today's perspective, I think even with already trained base models, that was the DeepSeek factor. Still, you might need for RAGs, for fine tuning, you might need some sort of infrastructure. This is highly possible not to be in your basement, but okay, I might be wrong there. So for all this, if you can contain these risks, again, the strategic perspective, if you are into business, you always know when you construct such a strategy, you have also the risk that you're going to analyze, and the mitigation and ways to mitigate. So if you have local infrastructure, if you can set it right, if you can run your algorithms on your LLMs, your own data, so that you have curated yourself and you validated yourself. If you are able to run it locally or nationally, very safe in a very safe environment, I think that most of the inherent fears that politicians might have are out of the table. Still, you will have a lot of ethical issues to consider. And ethics, as you know, is something very relative. I mean, the ethical approach in Europe, as reflected on the AI law, compared to the Chinese or the Russian or the US, they might be completely apart. And therefore, it might be very difficult for you guys that you're a business owner. You want to develop these kind of systems across the universe. So you need to be able to understand the local context and the local specificities and ethical standards very well, possibly through working with local people. Otherwise, it's very difficult to approach. It goes beyond the systemic part. So, and even before coming to providing some turnkey solution to a parliament, the design phase will have to capture and analyze and determine all these ethical parameters. And to close this thing, so the approach that we were suggesting is the following: is simply, to put it very simply, regardless of the technology, regardless of the application, regardless of the approach, our suggestion also towards the IPU, in order for them to propagate this opinion, if they agree with it, would be to have some sort of a committee, of a parliamentary body. The parliament needs to be on top of that, and the parliament is, of course, beyond its leadership. It's representatives, the representatives of the people. Still, they have to be in charge, and if they're not able to have this understanding, they should be supported by some sort of ethics committee. There can be stakeholders from civil society or universities, or even the private sector in these kind of committees. But in any case, since we are talking here of potentially very, very powerful tools that have the potential of changing the way we govern ourselves, I think this justifies being cautious, being very structured in our approach, and also maybe taking a little bit longer to decide, because I don't think here that it's not like technology. I mean, we need to build a system quicker than others. That might be irrelevant for a private entity, but a private entity that is not quite there might get broke, but might go broke. A parliament cannot afford to make that big mistakes. So I do not blame at all parliaments that are not at all in this IPU list survey I mentioned just in the beginning. I already spoke to a lot of colleagues that said, look, yes, we are doing stuff, but simply we are not feeling ready yet. I respect this. Any decision regarding such powerful systems and applications might require some second thought or better thought. And in the end, this might be much better than just trying, to initiate as quick as possible application that in the end nobody might be hurting someone, or even worse, might be hurting the institutional trust. That might be really, really bad, and no institution and representatives would want that.
Thank you. That's good. I have one more question if we have time. I wanted to follow up on the ethical perspective, and I'm curious if there's anything going on in Europe relative to the sort of long-term impacts on AI. The big focus in the US has been on efficiency. I think, and a lot of this, we have thousands of startups today in the US focused on AI. All those streams lead into only a few bodies of water, if you will. So OpenAI, Google, IBM, and there is a concern that's growing, as you can see in the U.S. government. We're firing lots of people, and people in our government are saying that they're going to be replaced with AI. The workers in general, and the long-term economic aspects of this that might disrupt our economies and create more disparity between the rich and the poor. Is Europe addressing these types of concerns along with the technology focus?
Well, the easy answer is no. I'm speaking with a lot of people, inevitably, and there are lots of concerns. I'm also sufficiently long around in this business that I know that many of these concerns might be mitigated through knowledge. As you know, the existential fears about losing the job and terminating the careers are very powerful. So, and this is why I'm a little bit worried about the lack of sufficient drive by governments and parliaments in order to educate their people. Because looking apart from what's going on in the US, I don't think that's precedent. So, looking apart, the basic approach that a lot of visionaries saw in AI technology is not to substitute human intellect. Of course, there are like this. A lot of people like this. A lot of futurists, whatever you call them. I recently heard that there's even a global association of futurists. Okay, there are too many of them around. But many of them saw in AI the potential to supplement and support human intellect rather than substitute. And actually, the broader approach we are taking in our writings, in our studies, is exactly this. And we are doing this because this technology is not like it fell from the stars, and we have prior experience in the 80s. Well, I was not around back then, but we had the digitization and the digitalization effort, and back then the fears were exactly the same. But I don't think that many were kicked out because they could not operate the computer. They were instead trained to use them, and I think this is the right approach to do, because in Europe it's also everybody's around the humanistic principle and the human initiative, and the human is at the center of things. We're talking here about a user-centric approach, which is in line with our common Western values. I would expect this from China, for instance, but this would be again in line with their values, and I respect that. But here in Europe and in the Western world, we cherish the human individual, and we should educate this individual first before considering anything else. And like it happens with every big development, people call it a revolution. I don't know if it is a revolution or not. This is determined historically, probably. But there are people that are pro, and there are people that are against. I think that the modern Luddites, so the people that are here really against, they will have issues. They will face strong issues. Imagine people back then. There were a lot of people, refusing to use computers. Okay, and back then it might be still understandable from a certain perspective. I think now, as we we are in a digital world, so not using computers or tools or digital tools. Yeah, this is something that will impact their careers. But for them that will embrace this kind of technology, I think that this is going to push society forward, businesses forward, also governance forward. So I'm not against this kind of development. The opposite. I think that we have once in a lifetime opportunity, as already mentioned, to empower parliamentary institutions with, to make them more relevant to the people. That these are single institutions governing billions of people. It's not easy, and to break this divide between this single civilians and their representatives, this can only be done. There's no point. I mean, people talk also about possibility of direct democracy. I don't think that this is possible anymore. This was the case in ancient Athens, where there were maybe, a few tens of thousands of individuals governing the country collectively. In today's societies, we have billions of individuals. There has to be some sort of representation. So maybe on the local level. On the local level, we might discuss about this. It might still be relevant in cities, but in national level or supranational, that's very tough to grasp. So these kind of technologies can bridge this gap, can help us understand civilians better, society better, build better laws, regulate better, more efficiently, close the feedback loops, because no law is perfect. One needs to change them, be able to change them, amend them very quickly according to shifting, to changing situations. Previously, this law-making cycle was very big and very opaque. As mentioned earlier, by automating parts of this cycle, you might be able to provide to lawmakers, to governments, very strong tools to perform the work more efficiently. And this is what we're talking here about, making the parliamentary system and the governance system more efficient. And rather than, we're not talking here about taking advantage in order to block views or whatever. This is, of course, these are, of course, fears, but we have to mitigate them. And this is here where the governments have to be, and the parliaments have to be very aware of these fears, and they have to educate their people that provide the necessary transparency, algorithmic transparency if necessary, so that the trust is being maintained in the system. I don't think that anybody that is within the system gains anything from trying to tear it apart. Only outsiders would have that kind of aspiration.